follow a TED talk. I feel like the kid who didn't learn their lines, so sorry I'm going to be reading most of it, but here goes. So last week, Google contacted me about this talk, and they asked me for my Twitter feed and my Google Plus account. And see, the thing is, I wasn't joking when I said I hate technology. I don't have any of those things. I do have a Facebook account, but it's linked to an old email address that doesn't really work anymore, and I've forgotten the password. So I'm wondering why I'm sitting here giving a talk on technology. But let's start with who I am. My name's Sara, and I'm a director of well, basically anything that I want to tell the story of. And in that sense, I'm not any different from any other director in the world. What we want to do is tell stories. So everyone's probably heard of the classic three-act structure that all screenplays are supposed to be based on. Well, it's pretty basic, and following the rules of the three-act structure is no guarantee of a compelling story. But I needed a structure for this talk, so I thought that one could work. So this is my story. It's a personal character-driven story. Hollywood would want it to have universal appeal. I hope it simply entertains and at least contains one thought-provoking idea. So Act 1, set up an introduction. Well, I've made a start on that already. My situation is I hate technology, and I'm the main character. Now, the main character, according to many screenwriting manuals, often starts unhappy and at odds with the status quo. Well, I suppose I am. I'm desperately trying to work out how I stay relevant as a filmmaker in this constantly evolving world of technology. Who am I telling stories now for? How and where will they be seen? And most importantly, who's going to pay for them? So that's my setup. And as we reach the end of Act 1, I need to create what's known as an inciting incident. So I need some controversy. And I'm going to call that YouTube. Now, I probably got these facts wrong, but apparently YouTube has a global community of 1 billion people and around 4 million sources of content. That's truly amazing. But what this does to the attention spans of 1 billion people is my first reason for being a little skeptical. When you go to the cinema, you've invested time in getting there, buying your ticket, your popcorn, finding a seat. So in the first 10 minutes, if you don't like the film, chances are it's still quite hard to leave. But when viewing films on the internet, it's easy to leave. And this problem gets even harder when telling stories within the context of advertising. Apparently, Trevor Beatty, the brilliant British advertising creative, said recently that the future of advertising will be 5 seconds long. No, this is a disaster for me. I've also been told on a couple of jobs recently to tell the whole story of a 60-second commercial in the first 10 seconds. That's also a disaster for me, and for filmmaking and storytelling in general. In fact, that would mean my talk is now over, as everything I've said I've got to say over 20 minutes I should have said by now. You might be hoping that, by the way, by the time I finish. I'd like the thinking on this to change. I want the challenge to be, make sure the first 5 seconds is so good that people will not want to leave. That's been the rule of any great film forever. Start strong. Be as intriguing and compelling and visually interesting as you can be. And here's some examples, my proof. Some good examples of the first 5 seconds, I think you'll agree. So, okay, on into Act 2. By now, I should be making some positive gains as a character, and things should be going a bit better for me. So let's switch to some positive aspects of how technology has helped at least me change the way I tell stories. So from the advances in equipment, that's too boring to talk about, to be honest, to the way it's viewed on a smartphone. I love it when a first cut of mine is seen on a phone in the back of a taxi. But hey, how can I argue when I can streetcast without having to pound the streets looking for the perfect person? And I can reach entire communities through the internet, finding exactly who I'm looking for. 2 of my recent jobs have been cast through Facebook alone. Someone help me with that. And cameras are freeing me more. I've really enjoyed working with smaller digital formats recently. They buy you time and freedom. The lone wolf director filming hours of irrelevant footage. Well, maybe, but it made filmmaking seem fun and experimental again without the rigid confines of a formal shoot. And I think the benefits were huge. And obviously, post-production, but I know I don't need to tell you anything about that, but I hear it fixes everything. And finally, content. In the last couple of years, apart from traditional commercials, I've also made an interactive film, 2 documentaries, and I'm about to embark on my first music video in a long time. To be honest, I thought I'd hung up my music video boots a long time ago. But rather than just 1 or 2 music channels now deciding whether a film or a song gets heard, now there are limitless channels to show it on. So music videos are having a well-deserved revival, I think, as they've once become a relevant creative medium for a band to get seen and their music heard. In fact, music is listened to through YouTube as much as music-only channels. So, and the better the idea and execution, the more chance there will be people of passing it around. So the brief I just got was to make something mental and crazy and dark and trippy and something that people would want to share. Now, as long as I don't care about the tiny budget, then what better brief can you get than that? So this is where the internet and YouTube, for me, really do come into their own. And even though I've criticised its impact on attention spans, I applaud its impact on distribution and getting films seen. So worldwide distribution used to be the holy grail of for a filmmaker. That's now called the internet, I suppose. I'm talking about the democratisation of film making in general. Films used to be really expensive to make. You know, you had to the things you had to do to get a 35mm camera. And I love the fact that pretty much anyone can get hold of a camera, make something, and if it's any good, you hope it'll get seen. So this is all positive. I'm basically getting more and more chances to create different kinds of stories, of varying different time lengths, all with the brief of being as creative as possible. But keeping to the 3-act structure, at the end of Act 2, the stakes should be getting higher. That's my continued career, I suppose. I need to again be discouraged and suffer a major setback, this time worse than where I started. And for me, this is called interactive film. I don't know about you guys, but I don't really like it. I mean, I'm a bit of a luddite. I have made one. It's not bad. You can see it on YouTube. But did it enhance my story? I suppose the reason interactive rarely works for me is because I don't watch films to necessarily interact. I love watching films to be taken somewhere and to feel something unexpected. And often interactive film for me feels a bit gimmicky, like there's a lot of kind of comedic gimmicks in it, used to force engagement from the audience. And usually this is because the film lacks something, and that something for me is a strong story. And this suggests to me that people are trying to reinvent the wheel, but missing the point. Movies for me are like dreams. They're submersive and engaging, and that's what I think is most important, no matter what the technology is. So I've kind of sufficiently depressed myself again, but that's okay, because that's how I'm supposed to feel going into Act 3. My crisis should probably continue for a little bit longer, but I feel like I've suffered enough, and so have you. So I'm going to go straight to the climax and resolution of my talk. And in Star Wars, that would be Luke blows up the Death Star and saves the rebellion. So all I'm going to do is show you the best bit of work I've seen recently in the area of viral film. Now, before I show it, I asked a bunch of creators, and I know this is what everyone says about virals. I asked what gets passed around, and they said the whole thing about cats and, you know, slapstick comedy, preferably including nudity. And I think they were joking, but I hope they were, because I want viral filmmaking to be about the best films getting seen and passed around. And I truly believe if the story is good, people will want to watch films about other emotions too. So controversially, I've chosen to show a music video because it's one of the best things I've seen recently, and it still counts as a viral because it got passed on to me, and even I managed to pass it on to 5 other people. So, and the link was through YouTube, so I thought that might help me back there. So this is it. I wish I'd made that. That promo's had 18 million hits.
Not done.
No, not quite. 18,
sorry.
not quite. 18 million hits and rising, and it doesn't, to me, matter what it was shot on or how much it cost. It perfectly follows the 3-act structure, and it made me feel something. So some of my heroes in film are never happy with the last film that they made. Woody Allen, Scorsese, they all say it. At least I've got something in common with them. I feel that too. The hunger and striving for doing better, making something that feels closer to you, or says something that means something to you, makes people feel something. And it doesn't really matter for me about the actual technology, as long as there are clever people out there like Google who can help people like me tell more stories, creating endless platforms for how they'll be seen. In the end, I set myself a brief to talk about how technology technology has changed the way we tell stories. The way they're made and how they're seen might have changed, but what hasn't changed is what makes a good story. That challenge is the same and will remain the same forever. So summing up from all this, from my limited point of view as selfish director, is that technology should bend to fit creativity and not the other way around. Technology should never be the story, just silently sit behind the scenes, helping aid whatever the story is in new and exciting ways. I'll end with a final funny clip that sums up my hopes and fears about technology. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so get your questions ready. I've got a couple of questions I'm going to fire away to start with. And if you have questions for Sarah, prep them. I won't be long.
Remember, I don't know anything about technology,
nothing about technology. So my first question is really about the BMXing film that you showed. From a director's point of view, you kind of glossed over why you'd picked that clip afterwards. But can you say a bit more about what was it about that? Was it the craft, the story? Seemed to be the story. Was it the music? It seemed like, you know, a classic piece of UGC style content, right? So
yeah. So why has that done so well? Why did I like it? I think just because of the purity of the story, really. Just because I think it takes you on a journey and it feels really real. I mean, I am not a big fan of the wobbly cam, to be honest, and the zooming in and out. But I feel like I don't know how. I don't know whether, you know, that's the real guy that happened to. I don't know whether he's an actor. And all those lines are blurred for me to the point where I believe it completely. And to me, that's the most important thing. So I believe that guy. We've watched his journey, and we've watched him kind of succeed at the end. And there is a high, and it works with the song. Works perfectly with the song.
Yep.
Those are kind of my simple reasons, really.
I've got another question, but I want to give other people... Yes, Amy.
Having to get the story across in the first 5 seconds or 60 seconds. And I think technology has a lot to do with that. But I've also noticed recently this trend that we're all looking for kind of long-form drama and the kind of gorging on box sets and technology in another way enabling us to, and we're like looking for those long, well-told stories. Because I think like in recent years we've stepped away from that. Does that give you hope? Do you...
That does indeed, yeah, that very much gives me hope. And, you know, a music video is just a marketing tool for a band, so why can't, you know, advertisers create longer form content that people will want to share? And I'm hoping that is my future, you know, longer than 5 seconds, longer than 60 seconds, you know. Maybe I'll get to flex it to 10 minutes one day.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hands up, and we have a mic, a rover. So I have a question while they're thinking of a good question for you. So you talked a bit about the kind of notion of democratizing filmmaking, and anyone can be a director, anyone can go out with a cell phone basically and shoot something. Where does that kind of democratization of not just hardware but the kind of platforms to share it, where does that put experts, in inverted commas, like you, like your trade, directors, in what's your role now?
Well, I still think there's a huge craft to filmmaking and storytelling, you know, never mind the technology. So even though there are all these people making films, it actually hasn't scared me that much because I don't think there are that many that are that good. So, and also there are different, you know, it's how do you skin a cat? It's like that works, that video, because it's that real, you know, but that's, you know, if you have a different kind of film, you'll need different tools. So budgets have to fit for the project, you know, and not just become about as cheaply and as, you know, roughly as possible. That's just one style.
Thank you. Well, question at the front. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm wondering, taking it the other way, what your thoughts are on sort of the binge viewing, Arrested Development, Netflix kind of thing. So the technology enabling extremely long form viewing, if you will.
So you're talking over like box sets, or are you talking about like...
So Netflix, so Arrested Development released an entire season in one day on Netflix this past year. So they did a new season of Arrested Development. You can watch all 12 episodes or whatever in one sitting if you want to, which changes how you tell the story from episode to episode. As you can stream things, you know, jokes from 3 episodes ago, you can expect people to actually know.
And that comes from that box set starting point, wasn't it, where people were binging on them, me included, if it was a good box set. So I can see why that's, you know, why that's happened. I mean, I say if it's good enough to do, and then they've got to work out how to do their next series really quickly, don't they? So it's just whether they can keep the quality up. Because if they do that and the quality isn't good enough, there won't be another series. So do you take your time, craft it properly and make people wait, or do you, like you said, binge? I'm not sure, but all I know is if it starts to tail off being good, people will stop watching it. So basic answer.
Other questions? Anyone over this side? So I'm going to ask another one while someone thinks. So as a self-confessed Luddite,
Yeah.
okay, I think it's interesting to kind of ask, the Luddites particularly, like, where you see the future unfolding, because I think, no one really has any idea like what's going to happen. So people who are not Luddites, profess to have some kind of vision and informed, like, oh, it's going to be like this. Actually, no one has any idea. And actually, in many ways, I think people with a kind of clean view of technology and a kind of more, I suppose, discerning / skeptical view of it, maybe have a better informed view. Where do you see things in, 5 years, 8 years? What do you think the young filmmakers of that era will be doing, and what they'll be using and how they'll be making?
Well, I mean, really for the young filmmakers that I'm happy to be out there with 5Ds, I just hope that they kind of continue understanding the discipline of storytelling and filmmaking, so that, they still think about preparing and planning ideas so that they really work, in the end. So, and it's, for me, it's not worth making 50 pieces of work. It's worth making one really well. So that's one thing. Then, for me personally, I'm hoping that it's going to, that all this content is going to keep me in employment and give me different challenges. So, push me to kind of expand stories. And creatives, I hope that when they are given the challenge of something longer, they can rise to that. They're going to have to think about it a little bit more than coming up with a one-line idea. If they have got a brand that wants them to make a short film, well, don't just have the idea for that short film. Really craft it. And if you can't script write it yourself, get script writers in, or get the people that you need in to make it really good. Because I think then brands, the more and more successful examples of that area, the more brands will do it, and then that's the better for me. So.
Okay, any more questions for Sarah? No, well, thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.